The gallery's chandelier shattered like 1,000 accusations, raining crystal shards onto the polished oak floor as Jordan's fist connected with Joe's jaw. Blood sprayed across a half-finished canvas, mixing crimson with the raw ochre swirls that had been destined for obscurity anyway. In that frozen heartbeat, amid the gasps of the elite crowd clutching their champagne flutes, Jordan realized the man he'd loathed for 3 years wasn't made of marble after all. He was flesh, fracturing just like the rest of us. Joe staggered back, his tailored blazer ripping at the seam, but he didn't swing. Instead, he locked eyes with Jordan, those piercing blue depths not blazing with fury, but pooling with something far worse. A weary, unspoken plea that clawed straight into Jordan's gut. The room erupted in chaos. Curators shrieking, security barreling through the throng. But Jordan couldn't move, pinned by the weight of what he'd just unleashed. The hate he'd nursed now curdling into a regret that tasted like bile. And then, as the first sirens wailed in the distance, Joe wiped the blood from his lip with the back of his hand and whispered, just loud enough for Jordan to hear over the din. Finally, someone sees the monster I've been painting all along. Jordan had always hated Joe Harlan. It wasn't the kind of hate that simmered quietly, like a grudge over a stolen parking spot in the frantic gridlock of Manhattan. No, this was a bonfire, fed by years of sidelined dreams and the sting of always coming in second. They were both artists, scrabbling for scraps in the cutthroat New York scene, where a single gallery nod could mean rent money or ramen for months. Joe's paintings, those brooding abstracts in bruised purples and jagged blacks, hung in Soho lofts and Chelsea penthouses, fetching prices that made Jordan's freelance gigs look like pocket change. Jordan's work? Vibrant cityscapes, alive with the pulse of Brooklyn stoops and Harlem jazz dives, dismissed as derivative urban grit by the same critics who fawned over Joe's profound emotional depth. It started innocently enough back in their MFA days at Pratt Institute. Jordan remembered the first critique session like it was etched in acid. Professor Langston, with her silver bob and voice like smoked velvet, pausing at Joe's easel. "This isn't just paint, Harlan. It's confession." The class murmured approval, eyes sliding past Jordan's canvas. A riot of yellow cabs and neon signs, as if it were wallpaper. Joe had smirked then, not maliciously, but with the easy confidence of someone who'd never questioned his place in the light. Jordan seethed through the rest of the semester, vowing to eclipse him. By the time they hit the real world, the rivalry had calcified. Joe landed a solo show at the Whitney before Jordan could even get a foot in the door at a Bushwick co-op. Invites to Joe's openings became Jordan's personal gauntlet. Show up, sip the free wine, force a nod at the swirling voids on canvas that everyone pretended to understand. And Joe? He was always there, charming the collectors with that disarming grin. His laugh cutting through the chatter like a well-placed hook. "Jordan, man, your last piece in that group show? Killer energy. We should grab a beer sometime, swap war stories." It was always the same olive branch, extended with just enough sincerity to make Jordan's refusal feel petty. But Jordan refused every time. Beers turned into avoidance, avoidance into resentment. By age 28, it was ritual. Spot Joe across a crowded loft, veins tightening like overstrung guitar wires. Last night's disaster at the Aperture Gallery was just the spark that ignited the powder keg. Jordan's series, Fractured Burrows, had been relegated to a back wall, overshadowed by Joe's latest, Echoes Unseen, 12 massive panels, each a storm of shadow and subtle scar-like lines, evoking whispers of violence just below the surface. Critics raved. Buyers swarmed. Jordan, nursing his third gin and tonic in the corner, watched a silver-haired patron drop 50 grand on the centerpiece without blinking. It was too much, the erasure of his own work, the effortless way Joe claimed the room. So when Joe brushed past him on the way to the podium for his toast, murmuring something about inspiring competition, Jordan snapped. The punch landed clean, born of 3 years' worth of swallowed barbs. Now, as paramedics swarmed the gallery and flashbulbs popped like erratic fireworks, Jordan sat handcuffed to a wrought iron bench outside, the December chill seeping through his threadbare coat. His knuckles throbbed, split open like overripe fruit, but the real ache was deeper, a hollow in his chest where triumph should have been. What the hell had he done? Joe was carted off on a stretcher, face pale under the ambulance lights, but conscious, whispering to the EMTs with that same damn poise. No charges, the cops said later. Joe refused to press them. Self-defense, he'd muttered through swollen lips, eyes flicking away from Jordan's. He didn't mean it. The story hit the art blogs by morning. Rival artists clash at Aperture, Passion, or Petty Feud? Jordan's phone buzzed with cancellations. 2 commissions yanked. A mentor's disappointed voicemail. He holed up in his Williamsburg walk-up, a shoebox studio reeking of turpentine and takeout, staring at his latest unfinished piece. A skyline fractured by fault lines, mirroring the mess he'd made. Days blurred into a fog of regret and cheap bourbon. He half expected a lawsuit, or at least a blistering Instagram takedown from Joe's followers. Instead, nothing. Radio silence from the man who'd become his personal phantom. It was the knock on his door, sharp, insistent, that shattered the stasis. Jordan cracked it open, expecting a process server or a nosy landlord. Instead, there stood Joe, black eye blooming purple like one of his paintings, a canvas bag slung over his shoulder. "We need to talk," he said, voice rough as gravel, stepping inside before Jordan could protest. The air thickened, charged with the scent of Joe's cologne, sandalwood and something sharper, like fresh rain on concrete. Jordan backed against the kitchenette counter, heart hammering. "Look, Joe, Save it." Joe dropped the bag, unzipping it to reveal a rolled canvas, edges frayed like old wounds. He unrolled it on the scarred coffee table, pinning the corners with paint tubes and mugs. It was a study for one of the Echoes pieces. A figure huddled in shadow, back turned, skin marked with faint, deliberate gashes that bled into abstract fury. But up close, Jordan saw it. The figure's face, half obscured, bore his own features. The jawline, the tousled hair, even the faint scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood skateboarding wipeout. "What the fuck is this?" Jordan's voice cracked, heat rising in his cheeks. Joe met his gaze, unflinching. "You. It's always been you, Jordan. The rival I paint to remember why I fight." He paused, rubbing his jaw where the bruise shadowed his skin. "And the one who finally punched through the bullshit." The room spun. Jordan sank onto the sagging couch, the canvas a accusation glowing under the bare bulb. Hate, it turned out, was just the thinnest veil over something rawer. Something that had been staring back at him from Joe's easels all along. They talked, or rather Joe talked, words tumbling like loosened brushstrokes. Born in a Rust Belt town outside Pittsburgh, Joe had clawed his way to the city on scholarships and sheer spite. His father, a steelworker turned drunk after the mills shuttered, saw weakness in everything. Especially the sketchbooks Joe hid under his mattress. "Art's for sissies," he'd slur, belt cracking against Joe's ribs until the boy learned to dodge. By high school, Joe was out. Gay in a place where that word was a curse, and the bruises shifted from physical to the kind that seeped into your soul. New York was escape, but the shadows followed, manifesting in every canvas he birthed. Jordan listened, the gin haze lifting like morning fog over the East River. His own story spilled out in fragments. A golden boy upbringing in Seattle, parents who loved him but never understood the fire in his veins. The coming out at 16 that fractured family dinners but never his resolve. Art was his anchor, New York his proving ground. But Joe? Joe was the mirror he avoided, the success that highlighted his own stumbles. By midnight, the bourbon bottle was half empty, shared between them like a truce flag. Joe traced a finger over the canvas scar, voice low. "I don't hate you, Jordan. I envy you. That fire in your work. It's alive. Mine's just ghosts." Jordan's hand hovered, then landed on Joe's shoulder, the touch electric, tentative. "Then let's paint something real. Together." It was a dare, a bridge. Joe nodded, eyes softening, and for the first time, Jordan saw not the rival, but the man, vulnerable, achingly human. The collaboration started haltingly, like two rivers merging after a dam break. They cleared Jordan's studio floor, shoving drop cloths over pizza boxes and crumpled sketches, turning the space into a makeshift arena. Joe's supplies, premium oils from Pearl Paint, brushes with ergonomic handles, clashed with Jordan's scavenged acrylics and thrift store palettes, but the friction sparked ideas. Their first joint piece, a diptych, one-panel Jordan's vibrant chaos of subway crowds, the other Joe's muted undercurrents of isolation. Where they met in the center, colors bled, yellows warming to amber, blacks softening to indigo, like wounds healing at the seam. Days stretched into weeks, the winter bite outside forgotten in the heat of creation. Joe moved in temporarily, citing a flooded sublet in the East Village, but Jordan suspected it was more. The late-night confessions over cold pizza, the way Joe's laugh, rare, genuine, filled the loft like sunlight through grimy windows. They painted side by side, shoulders brushing, arguments flaring over composition like old times, but now laced with laughter. "Your lines are too goddamn aggressive," Joe would tease, flicking paint at Jordan's cheek. "And yours are too safe. Loosen up, pretty boy." The nickname stuck, affectionate barbs that masked the pull growing between them. Jordan caught himself watching Joe. The flex of his forearms as he layered glazes, the furrow in his brow when a shadow didn't sit right, the quiet grace when he thought no one saw. At night, on the pull-out couch too narrow for one, let alone two, Jordan lay awake, heart a drumbeat against the thin mattress. Was this the hate transmuting, or something he'd buried under rivalry's rubble? One snow-laced evening, as flurries danced past the fire escape, Joe paused mid-stroke, brush hovering. "Why'd you really hit me that night?" Jordan set down his palette knife, wiping sweat from his brow. The air hummed, thick with unsaid things. "Because you make me feel small, like I'll never measure up." Joe's eyes darkened, not with anger, but sorrow. He crossed the room in 2 strides, cupping Jordan's face with paint-streaked hands. "You don't. You make me remember how to feel big." Their lips met, hesitant, then fierce, a collision of pent-up storms. It was messy, tasting of turpentine and truth, hands tangling in hair and shirts, bodies pressing close enough to map each other's scars. They broke apart gasping, foreheads touching. "This changes everything," Jordan whispered. Joe smiled, faint but real. "Good. It's about time." Spring unfurled over the city like a reluctant bloom, cherry blossoms dusting the paths of Central Park, while the art world buzzed with whispers of their duo. Harlan and Reyes, from fists to masterpieces? The headlines read, turning their punch-up into legend. Invites flooded in, panels at the MoMA, features in art forum, and for once Jordan didn't feel like the undercard. Their diptych, Seams of Us, sold at auction for a figure that covered back rent and then some. Critics called it a revelation of queer kinship in abstract form. And Jordan basked in it, Joe's hand often finding his under gallery tables, a secret anchor in the spotlight. But peace, Jordan learned, was as fragile as wet pigment on canvas. Joe's past wasn't content to lurk in shadows. It clawed forward, unbidden. Late one night, as thunder rattled the loft skylight, Joe jerked awake from a nightmare, sheets twisted like restraints. Jordan stirred, arm draped possessively over Joe's waist. "Hey, it's me. You're safe." Joe's breath hitched, face slick with sweat. He buried his head in Jordan's neck, body trembling. "The belt. Always the fucking belt." The words spilled then, halting at first, then in a rush. Summers locked in the basement, father's rages fueled by layoffs and liquor, mother's silence a complicit veil. Coming out hadn't freed him. It had branded him, the town turning whispers to shouts, forcing him onto a Greyhound at 17 with nothing but a duffel and dreams. New York healed some wounds, but others festered. Nights when Joe's hands shook too hard to hold a brush, when success felt like a borrowed skin. Jordan held him through it, murmuring nonsense about sunrises over the Brooklyn Bridge, tracing lazy circles on Joe's back until dawn painted the room gold. "You're not that kid anymore," he said, pressing a kiss to Joe's temple. "You're here, with me." Joe pulled back, eyes searching. "And you? What's your ghost, Jordan?" The question hung, heavy as humidity before a storm. Jordan had always painted his pain outward. Bold strokes for the isolation of city crowds, fiery reds for the arguments with parents who called his orientation a phase they hoped would pass. But vulnerability, that was Joe's domain, the raw nerve exposed in every canvas. I guess, fear of fading, Jordan admitted finally, of pouring everything into this, and it's still not being enough. Joe's fingers intertwined with his, a vow in the grip. Then we'll burn bright together. They did for a while. Summers meant rooftop barbecues with the Queer Artist Collective. Drag queens flipping burgers, poets reciting odes to lost loves. Joe's laughter freer, Jordan's sketches looser. They traveled upstate, renting a cabin in the Catskills where the Hudson River ran lazy and wide. There, away from deadlines, they painted en plein air. Joe capturing the mist-shrouded hills in ethereal grays, Jordan infusing them with wildflower pops of color. Evenings dissolved into slow dances on the porch, radio crooning Billie Holiday, bodies swaying to rhythms older than the oaks, yet cracks spiderwebbed beneath the surface. Joe's ex, Marcus, a sculptor with a chiseled jaw and trust fund ego, resurfaced via a slick email. Miss our collaborations. Dinner. Jordan found Joe staring at his phone, face unreadable. Old flame? He asked lightly, but jealousy coiled like smoke. Just history, Joe replied, deleting the message. But doubt seated, watered by the art world's vultures. At a gala in Tribeca, a collector cornered Jordan, slurring, Harlan's got that tortured genius vibe. Bet he's got stories that'd make your pretty pictures look tame. Jordan laughed it off, but the barb lodged, festering. The real fracture came in autumn, leaves carpeting Washington Square Park like confetti from a bitter parade. Jordan's solo show loomed at a midtown gallery, his biggest yet, Veins of the City, 20 pieces chronicling New York's queer underbelly, from Stonewall ghosts to pandemic-empty avenues. Joe helped curate, his input sharpening edges, but tension simmered. This one's too sentimental, he'd critique, and Jordan would bristle, old insecurities flaring. Opening night arrived crisp and electric, the gallery thrumming with influencers and insiders. Jordan's work gleamed under track lighting, canvases pulsing with life. Joe stood sentinel by the entrance, handsome in a slim-fit suit, greeting guests with that effortless charm. But as the crowd thickened, Jordan noticed the drift. Joe deep in conversation with Marcus, who loomed like a bad sequel, hand on Joe's elbow, laughter too intimate. Jordan intercepted during a lull, champagne flute in hand. Marcus, right? Heard your last install at Dia was ambitious. The sculptor smirked, eyes raking Jordan. Reyes, yeah, Joe's mentioned you. The spark that lit his fire, huh. The words dripped condescension, but Joe just shifted, uncomfortable. Play nice, boys, Joe said, forcing levity. But the damage was done. Jordan excused himself, retreating to the stockroom where unsold pieces leaned like forgotten promises. He didn't see the fight brewing, Marcus pressing Joe against a pillar, voice low and urgent. You deserve better than this upstart. Come back to what we had, real passion, not this fling. Joe's refusal was firm, but Marcus's parting shot landed like a sucker punch. He's using you, Harlan. Your pain's his muse. By closing, Jordan was buzzed on adrenaline and wine, pulling Joe into a cab for home. What was that about? He demanded, city lights streaking past. Joe sighed, head against the window. Nothing. Marcus being Marcus. Bullshit. Jordan's voice rose, the cab's vinyl seats creaking under his shift. He's poison, and you're letting him in. Joe's eyes flashed. Not everyone's out to sabotage you, Jordan. Some of us have actual baggage. The words cut deep, echoing Jordan's deepest fear. So I'm just baggage now? The rival who got lucky. Joe recoiled. That's not. Forget it. Jordan paid the driver at their stop, storming up the stairs alone. The door slammed like a full stop, leaving Joe in the rain-slicked street, regret pooling at his feet. The fallout lingered, a cold front settling over the loft. Jordan threw himself into revisions, strokes angry and overworked, while Joe retreated to solitary sketches, lines tighter than before. Apologies came in fragments. A coffee run, a shared cigarette on the fire escape, but the trust had frayed, threads pulling loose. Then, the betrayal, Jordan, scrolling absently through old emails during a sleepless night, found it. Buried in Joe's sent folder, synced to the shared laptop. A thread with Marcus, timestamps from weeks ago. Need to vent, Joe had written. This thing with Jordan. It's intense, but I'm scared it's just rebound. Using his fire to burn away my shit. Followed by Marcus's reply. Told you. Dump him before he drags you down. Jordan's stomach plummeted. All the vulnerability, the nights of holding Joe through storms, it was just fodder? He confronted Joe at dawn. Laptop screen glowing like an accusation. How long, Joe? How long was I your therapy session? Joe's face crumpled, denial dying on his lips. Jordan, it wasn't like that. I was lost, reaching out. To him? After everything. Hurt twisted into rage, Jordan's voice echoing off the brick walls. I thought we were building something. Turns out I was just your canvas. Joe reached out, desperate. Please, let me explain. But Jordan was already grabbing his coat, the door clicking shut behind him like a guillotine. The city swallowed him whole, subways rumbling like his pulse. But the real quake was inside. Love curdled to ash. The peace they chased now a distant echo. Weeks passed in parallel isolation. Jordan crashed with a friend in bed-stewie, painting feverishly, each canvas an exorcism of Joe's ghost. Joe's texts went unanswered. I'm sorry. Come home. I love you. The last one Jordan deleted unread, the weight too heavy for his fractured heart. The art world, oblivious, crowned them anew. A joint exhibit proposed at the new museum, Bruises and Bridges. Jordan's agent pushed, sensing the buzz. It's gold, kid. Ride the wave. But Jordan saw it for what it was, a mockery of their seam now torn. He agreed, masochistic, showing up to the planning meeting in a Tribeca cafe. Rain pattering the awning like hesitant applause. Joe was there, thinner, shadows under his eyes like fresh underpaint. Thank you, he said softly, no defenses left. Jordan nodded curtly, burying himself in mock-ups. But as they pored over layouts, Joe's hand brushed his. Accidental, electric, and the dam cracked. Why'd you do it? Jordan whispered, voice raw. Joe's confession poured. The fear of vulnerability, the reflex to sabotage. Marcus as a crutch for old pains. I didn't mean those words. You weren't rebound, you were revelation. Still are. Tears stung Jordan's eyes, the cafe steam fogging the space between. I can't just forget. I know. Joe's voice broke. But fight for this. For us. The meeting ended in limbo, but something shifted. A tentative thread rewoven. Back in the loft that night, alone with his brushes, Jordan started a new piece. Two figures, back to back, scars interlocking like puzzle edges. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. The new museum exhibit loomed like a judgment day, 6 weeks of forced proximity, turning the loft into a minefield of half-spoken truths and lingering touches. Jordan and Joe navigated it with the caution of bomb techs. Morning coffees in silence, afternoons sketching concepts on butcher paper, evenings retreating to opposite corners. Yet the pull was magnetic, undeniable. Glances held too long, laughter bubbling up unbidden over a botched glaze. Jordan hated how easy it was to slip back, how Joe's quiet good morning could uncoil the knots in his chest. The betrayal's scar tissue softened under scrutiny. Joe didn't push, he showed. Folders of old journals surfaced, pages yellowed with adolescent scrawl. Poems of isolation, sketches of a boy with hollow eyes that mirrored Jordan's own younger self. This is what Marcus fed on, Joe explained one gray afternoon. Rain sheeting the windows. My doubts. But you make me want to rewrite the ending. Jordan traced the faded ink, heart aching. I want to believe that. Then let me prove it. Joe's hand covered his, warm and steady. No kiss, not yet. Just the promise of patience. A bomb on the raw edges. The exhibit planning intensified, their synergy reigniting like embers fanned to flame. Bruises and bridges evolved. Jordan's panels of urban resilience. Rain-slicked streets alive with protest marches, pride flags whipping in wind, juxtaposed with Joe's introspective voids, now laced with hints of light, fractures mending into filigree. The centerpiece. A collaborative installation, a massive wall where visitors could add their own strokes. Anonymous confessions in paint, building a communal scar map. Critics previewed it as the queer art event of the season, but whispers of their personal drama added spice. At a press junket in the museum's sun-drenched atrium, a reporter from Hyperallergic leaned in, sly. From rivals to lovers, fact or fiction? Jordan froze, fork midway to his mouth. But Joe fielded it with grace. Art's always personal. Let's just say we've learned to paint over the pain. The room chuckled, tension dissolving, but Jordan's pulse thrummed. Lovers. The word hung, unspoken between them since the fight. That night, back in Brooklyn, it cracked open. Joe cooked. Spaghetti carbonara, his one reliable dish, bacon sizzling like a heartbeat. Over wine, stories flowed. Jordan's first crush on a barista in college, the sting of rejection. Joe's clandestine hookups in Pittsburgh parks, fear shadowing every thrill. Laughter mingled with tears, the meal forgotten as they migrated to the couch. I miss this, Joe murmured, head on Jordan's shoulder. Me too. Jordan tilted his chin, lips brushing Joe's temple. The kiss followed, slow and searching, a reclamation. Hands roamed with reverence. Over collarbones, down spines, not conquest, but communion. They made love by lamplight, bodies a dialogue of give and take, whispers weaving through the dark. I see you. Stay. Dawn found them tangled, the city humming approval below. Renewal brought risks. Joe's father called. A gravelly voice from a 212 number Joe hadn't saved. Saw your name in the paper, boy. Fancy that. No apology, just a gruff invite to Pittsburgh for Thanksgiving. Laced with unspoken barbs. Joe hung up, face ashen. He thinks it's a phase. The art, me. Jordan pulled him close. Then we go together. Show him the man you've become. Joe searched his eyes, fear warring with hope. You'd do that? For you? Yeah. Pittsburgh was a time capsule. Steel skeletons rusting under November skies, rivers churning with industrial ghosts. Joe's childhood home squatted on a sagging street, siding peeling like old skin. His father, Harlan Sr., answered the door in a flannel shirt stained with motor oil, eyes narrowing at Jordan's hand in Joe's. The partner's a he, huh? No warmth, just appraisal. Dinner was a battlefield. Over venison and mashed potatoes, Senior grilled Joe on sales figures, dismissing the fairy tales on canvas with a snort. Jordan's presence irked him. City boy, teaching my son to prance? But Joe held firm, voice steady. He's my equal, Dad. In art. In life. The old man waved it off. But later, in the dim kitchen, he cornered Joe while Jordan stepped out for air. That bruise from summer round? Worth it if it made a man of you. Joe's stomach twisted, the admission of past violence, casual as passing salt. He fled to the porch, where Jordan found him retching into the azaleas. They drove back to New York in silence, the turnpike a blur of taillights. It's over, Joe said finally, knuckles white on the wheel. No more chasing ghosts. Jordan squeezed his thigh. You're free. The exhibit opened on a frigid December eve, the Bowery alive with limos disgorging the glitterati. Bruises and bridges filled the fifth floor, walls pulsing with their shared vision, interactive stations drawing crowds who dipped brushes into community palettes, adding strokes of magenta grief, cobalt joy, viridian hope. Joe and Jordan circulated, hands brushing and passing, a private Morse code amid the chaos. Reviews poured in ecstatic. The New York Times hailed it as a poignant queer manifesto, while Out magazine dubbed them the duo redefining vulnerability. But the real validation came from strangers. A trans teen tracing a scar line with trembling fingers, whispering, "This is me." An older couple, hands clasped, adding a bridge in gold leaf. Jordan watched Joe across the room, eyes shining, and knew. This was their piece, etched in pigment and pulse. Yet hubris whispered. Marcus crashed the after-party at a NoHo speakeasy. Tuxedo sharp as his tongue. Impressive, boys. But how long before the muse dries up? He cornered Jordan by the bar, breath hot with scotch. Harlan's always been fragile. You'll see. Joe intervened, steering Marcus out with icy politeness. But the seed lodged. That night, doubts resurfaced. Jordan dreaming of empty galleries. Joe waking to phantom belts. January brought a curveball. A residency offer from the McDowell Colony. 2 months in New Hampshire's woods, solo for each. Space to breathe. The letter read. Jordan jumped at it, craving solitude to unpack the whirlwind. Joe hesitated, then accepted, but the goodbye at Penn Station was fraught. Hugs lingering, promises murmured against lips. Letters bridged the miles. Joe's parcels arrived with pressed leaves and sketches of snow-draped pines. Jordan's with urban Polaroids and poems scrawled on napkins. "Missing your chaos," Joe wrote. "Come back soon." But isolation bred introspection. Jordan's work deepened. Canvases exploring abandonment's ache. Empty tenements. Lovers' silhouettes fading into fog. Joe's, he gleaned from photos, turned inward. Self-portraits with eyes averted, bruises blooming like abstract roses. Midway, a call shattered the idyll. Senior Harlan, dead of a heart attack in his recliner. TV blaring a Steelers game. Joe flew home alone, Jordan offering but refused. "This is mine to bury." The funeral was a sparse affair. Mill workers in ill-fitting suits. Joe's mother weeping quietly. Senior's will. The house to Joe with a codicil. "Make something of yourself, son. Not that pansy shit." Joe burned it in the backyard fire pit, ashes scattering like absolution. Back at McDowell, he poured it into paint. A triptych of fire and rebirth, sent to Jordan with a note. From ashes, us. Reunion was at LaGuardia, spring thaw greening the tarmac. They collided in arrivals, bags forgotten, kisses fierce and public. "Never again," Jordan gasped. The city welcomed them with open arms, but shadows lengthened. Marcus's influence lingered. An anonymous tip to a gossip site. Harlan's breakdown. Rivals' romance or ruin? It detailed Joe's instability, twisting nightmares into scandal. Galleries whispered pullouts, collectors ghosted. Joe spiraled, studio sessions aborted, brushes idle. "They're right," he muttered one night, staring at blank canvas. "I'm broken goods." Jordan cupped his face. "No, you're brilliant. We're in this." But the pressure mounted, climax building like a nor'easter off the Atlantic. Summer scorched the city into a furnace, asphalt shimmering. Sea units groaning like overtaxed hearts. The scandal's fallout singed their edges. One major buyer backed out, citing creative differences, code for reputational jitters. Jordan's agent urged damage control. A joint interview, polished and performative, but Joe recoiled. "I'm not a sideshow, Jordan. Not your redemption arc." The words stung, reopening fissures. Jordan threw himself into a new commission. A mural for a Harlem community center. Vibrant histories of queer black joy, but resentment simmered. Late nights, he'd return to the loft dusty with plaster, finding Joe curled on the couch, sketchpad abandoned, eyes distant as Winter Hudson. "We need to fight this," Jordan said one humid evening, fanning himself with a takeout menu. "Together." Joe's laugh was hollow. "Together? Like Pittsburgh? Or the exhibit, where I dragged you into my mess?" Jordan knelt before him, hands on knees. "Your mess is ours. Always was. But trust, once shattered, mends crooked." Joe's silences deepened, punctuated by phantom calls. Old friends from Pittsburgh, probing condolences laced with judgment. "Heard about your dad. And the other stuff. You okay, kid?" Each one chipped at him until one night, the dam burst. Jordan came home to silence, the studio light spilling like an accusation. Joe sat at the easel, brush in hand, but the canvas was a frenzy. Slashes of black and red, a figure himself, torn apart by invisible hands. "Can't do this anymore," Joe rasped, voice cracking. "The world's waiting for me to crack." Jordan crossed the room, heart in throat. "Then crack with me. Let me hold the pieces." Joe whirled, eyes wild. "You can't fix me, Jordan. No one can." The brush flew, splattering paint across the wall. A violent bloom. He grabbed his coat, storming out into the muggy night, door slamming like thunder. Hours ticked by, Jordan pacing, phone silent. At 3 a.m., a call from an unknown number. Bellevue Hospital. "Mr. Harlan attempted. He's stable. Room 412. The cab ride blurred, panic of ice. Jordan burst into the room, fluorescent hum mocking his dread. Joe lay pale against starched sheets, wrist bandaged, for dripping sedative calm. A half-empty pill bottle on the bedside table. Joe's pain meds from a long-ago sprain, hoarded like unspoken defeat. The doctor, a weary woman with kind eyes, pulled Jordan aside. He called a friend first. Said he couldn't burden you. Suicide watch, she explained, 72 hours minimum, psych eval pending. Jordan sank into the visitor's chair, head in hands. How had he missed it? The late nights, the averted gazes, not distance, but drowning. When Joe stirred at dawn, eyes fluttering open, Jordan took his hand, voice steady despite the quake. "I'm here, not going anywhere." Joe's gaze flickered, shame pooling. "I didn't mean to scare you. Just wanted the noise to stop." Jordan leaned in, forehead to Joe's. "Then we'll quiet it. Together." Recovery was a slow unfurl, days bleeding into weeks. Joe checked out to a psych ward upstate, a converted farmhouse amid rolling hills, group therapy circles and art rooms stocked with non-toxic supplies. Jordan visited weekends, the drive a meditation in patience. Wildflowers nodding along I-87. Radio tuned to Old Soul to drown the worry. Their sessions were rituals. Walks by the pond, where Joe skipped stones and stories. Childhood dreams of Paris ateliers, the terror of first love. "You saved me," Joe said one golden afternoon, hand in Jordan's. "Not from the pills. From believing I deserved it." Jordan squeezed back. "We save each other." Discharge brought them to a sublet in the Hudson Valley. Neutral ground, a cottage with creaky floors and a view of the river's bend. No deadlines, just healing. Mornings yoga on the dew-kissed deck. Afternoons hiking trails where leaves whispered forgiveness. Joe's painting returned tentative. Small watercolors of the water's shimmer. Colors soft as breath. Jordan joined, their easels side by side, strokes syncing like heartbeats. Intimacy rebuilt brick by brick. Shared baths scented with eucalyptus. Bodies rediscovering trust. "I love you," Joe whispered one starlit night, tracing Jordan's jaw. "All of you, the fighter, the dreamer." "Love you more," Jordan replied, sealing it with a kiss that tasted of forever. Fall beckoned them back to the city, stronger but scarred. The art world had moved on, scandals as ephemeral as pop-up shops, but their return was quiet triumph. A pop-up show in a Dumbo warehouse? Intimate, unpretentious. Mended seams, they called it. Canvases born of the valley, bridges arcing over bruises, light piercing voids. The crowd was eclectic. Old allies, new faces. A therapist Joe had bonded with who brought homemade pie. No speeches, just music. A queer folk singer strumming tales of resilience. And paint stations for all. As dusk fell, Jordan pulled Joe to the rooftop, city sprawl twinkling below. "We made it," he said, arms around Joe's waist. Joe turned, eyes alight. "And we're just starting." But peace in New York is ever provisional. Winter whispered warnings. A letter from Joe's mother, postmarked Pittsburgh, enclosing a check. For the house. Sell it. Move on. Enclosed photo. Senior in his prime, arm around a younger Joe, smile stiff as starch. Joe stared at it, then the check. "She thinks money erases it." Jordan's arm tightened. It doesn't, but we can choose what stays. They tore it up, scattering confetti over the East River from the Brooklyn Bridge, wind carrying ghosts away. Yet betrayal's echo lingered in subtler forms. Jordan's mural commission expanded, a citywide project, panels in subways and parks, but whispers followed. Harlan's the liability. Reyes carrying him. Joe's solo offers dried up, agents citing recent events. Resentment brewed, not explosive, but insidious. A sidelong glance when Jordan landed a TEDx talk. A sigh when Joe's submission bounced from a juried show. It peaked at a holiday party in Chelsea, fairy lights twinkling like false stars. An editor from a major press cornered them, pitching a memoir. Your story, rivalry to romance, the breakdown. It's gold. Joe stiffened, champagne flute trembling. Our pain isn't content. The editor backpedaled, but damage bloomed. In the cab home, Joe erupted. Is that all we are now? A cautionary tale. Jordan reached for him. No, we're survivors. But Joe's eyes were distant. Survivors don't drag each other down. The argument simmered into silence. The loft a chill crypt. Jordan crashed on the couch, staring at ceiling cracks like fault lines. Dawn brought clarity or fracture. Joe was packing duffel half full. I need space, Jordan, to stand on my own. Heart plummeting, Jordan blocked the door. This is running. From me. From us. Joe's voice broke. I'm saving us. Before I break you more. The door closed softly, Joe's footsteps fading down the stairs. Jordan slid to the floor, sobs racking. The rival reclaimed. The love lost anew. January's grip tightened. Snow blanketing the city in hush. But Jordan's world roared with absence. The loft echoed with ghosts. Joe's sandalwood scent clinging to pillows, half-used tubes of Prussian blue on the sill. He threw himself into work, the mural sprawling across a Bronx overpass, bold declarations of queer endurance in aerosol bursts. Passers-by paused, nodding approval, but each layer felt like armor over a hollow core. Friends rallied. A drag brunch in the village, where sequins and sarcasm dulled the edge. Late-night diner runs with his agent, plotting comebacks over greasy eggs. You're Jordan Reyes, she'd say, tapping her fork. The firebrand. Don't let one storm snuff you. But Joe was the storm and the shelter. Calls went to voicemail. Miss you. Come home. Texts unanswered. A digital void. Jordan stalked his socials. Masochistic. Posts from a Jersey crash pad. Vague abstracts of barren trees. Captions quoting Whitman. I am large. I contain multitudes. The breaking point came mid-February, Valentine's chill seeping through cracks. Jordan's mural unveiling drew crowds. Activists, artists, a news van from New York won. But midway, his phone buzzed. A mutual friend. Frantic. Joe's at the old spot. The bridge. Not good. Heart seizing, Jordan bolted. Subway forgotten. Hailing a cab through slush-choked streets. The Brooklyn Bridge loomed, cables like harp strings in the wind. River below a black ribbon. Joe leaned on the railing, coat flapping, face gaunt under sodium lamps. Not jumping. Yet. But the posture screamed surrender, eyes fixed on the churning water. Joe! Jordan's shout cut the gale, feet pounding pedestrian planks. Joe turned, surprise flickering to resignation. Go back, Jordan. This isn't your fight. Like hell. Jordan closed the gap, hands gripping the rail beside him, close enough to feel the tremor. You don't get to decide that alone. Wind howled, whipping words away, but Joe's cracked open. The isolation gnawing, the world shrinking to failures. Rejections piling like snowdrifts. Mother's check a final severing. I'm poison. Always have been. Better to end it clean. Jordan's throat burned. Clean? You're my everything, mess and all. He grabbed Joe's arm, pulling him close, bodies shielding against the blast. Remember the valley? The fire? We burned brighter together. Tears tracked Joe's cheeks, freezing midfall. I don't deserve. Deserve? Life's not a merit badge. Jordan's voice rose, fierce. It's a gift, and I'm not letting you throw it away. Sirens wailed distant, someone's 911. But Joe sagged against him, fight ebbing. How do we fix this? Jordan held tighter. One stroke at a time. Paramedics arrived gentle, wrapping Joe in blankets, Jordan riding shotgun in the ambulance, hand clasped over the vinyl gurney. Bellevue again, but this time Jordan stayed, curling in the chair through nights of monitors beeping like metronomes, days of therapists circling vulnerabilities. Joe's second chance was structured. Outpatient now, a queer support group in Chelsea, meds fine-tuned for the shadows. Jordan became sentinel, cooking kale smoothies Joe pretended to like, dragging him to life drawing sessions where bodies posed unashamed. See, Jordan whispered during one, charcoal flying. We're all scarred. Beautifully. Spring coaxed green from concrete, mirroring their thaw. Joe started a new series, Refractions? Prisms of light bending through fractures, colors refracting pain into prism rainbows. Jordan collaborated peripherally, his murals incorporating shards, literal glass embeds catching sun, symbolizing irreparable beauty. Reconciliation deepened in layers. Date nights reemerged. Picnics in Prospect Park, blankets spread under dogwoods, sharing falafel and fears. I ran because I feared losing you, Joe confessed, grapes staining his lips. But losing myself hurt worse. Jordan fed him a strawberry juice sweet. Then stay found. With me. Intimacy flowered tentative, then bold, nights where touches mapped new territories. Laughter punctuating gasps. Affirmations whispered like prayers. You're my peace, Jordan breathed, bodies entwined. Yet the world tested. A Pittsburgh gallery reached out, ironic, a queer arts fest seeking Joe's Echoes for a Rust Belt reclamation show. Face the ghosts, Jordan asked over diner coffee. Joe pondered, spoon stirring sugar into oblivion. With you? Yeah. The road trip was catharsis. I-80 unspooling like thread, playlists of Springsteen and Hozier. Pittsburgh greeted with drizzle, but Joe's shoulders squared. The install was intimate, a warehouse turned haven. His voids now beacons for local queer youth sketching in corners. Opening night, senior sold mill loomed backdrop, but Joe's toast defied it. These paintings were my hiding. Now they're invitations to see, to heal. Mother attended, tentative, hugging him stiffly post-speech. Proud, she mumbled, eyes wet. No more checks, just a nod, a beginning. Back in New York, momentum built. Their joint book deal materialized. Not memoir, but visual essay. Art of the seam. Dialogues between canvases, interspersed with letters of their unraveling and reweave. Publishers clamored, sensing authenticity. Summer hummed with possibility. A residency in Marfa, Texas. Vast skies for vast dreams. They drove, windows down, Joe's hand on Jordan's thigh, radio blasting Motown anthems. The desert stretched infinite, stargazing a nightly rite, meteors streaking like wishes granted. But autumn brought the ultimate conflict, a rival offer for Joe. A fellowship in Berlin, prestigious, solitary. 6 months, he said, brochure trembling. To grow. Alone. Jordan's gut twisted. And us? Joe's eyes pleaded. Stronger for it. The argument raged. Accusations of abandonment, fears of fragility. You're choosing escape again, Jordan shouted, pots clanging in the sink. Joe fired back. And you're choosing chains. Let me fly, damn it. Words weaponized, they parted furious. Joe to a hotel, Jordan to the studio, brushes slashing fury onto canvas. Days blurred. A standoff. Then, a package, Joe's sketchbook, pages filled with their life, bridge silhouettes, valley wildflowers, Jordan's profile in sleep. Note, growth isn't leaving. Its roots deeper, branches wider. Come with me. Jordan flew to JFK. Boarding pass to Berlin clutched like lifeline. Reunion at Tegel. Arms enveloping, apologies dissolving in kisses. Together, they vowed. Berlin was reinvention. Ateliers in Kreuzberg, beer gardens buzzing with philosophers. Joe's work exploded. murals on wall remnants, seams bridging east-west scars. Jordan's followed, urban grit meeting Teutonic precision. Winter found them in a garret, snow dusting the spree. New Year's, fireworks blooming, Joe proposed, not ring, but canvas. Their silhouettes, hands joined, backgrounds a fusion of skylines. Marry this, marry us. Jordan's yes was a sob, seal in paint-smeared embrace. The wedding was unscripted Americana. A Brooklyn backyard affair, June sun gilding the scene, wildflowers in mason jars nodding to valley days. No tuxes, just linen shirts rolled at sleeves, Jordan in sage, Joe in midnight blue, barefoot on grass. Guests. The collective, therapists turned friends, a Pittsburgh cousin bearing pie. Vows handwritten. Jordan's promising, to paint your shadows gold. Joe's vowing, to hold your fire without burning. Rings were hammered copper, etched with fracture lines, symbols of mended holes. The kiss drew cheers, then a bonfire crackled, stories swapped under strings of Edison bulbs. Mother's flight from Pittsburgh landed late, her hug to Joe lingering, redemption in the squeeze. You found your light, son. Honeymoon was road-tripped whimsy. Route 66 Echoes, motels with neon buzz, canyons swallowing secrets. They painted on route, desert sunsets in gouache, route markers in ink, portfolios swelling like their laughter. Back home, life layered on. The book launched to acclaim, tour hitting coasts. Signings in San Francisco lofts, panels in LA sun. Bruises and Bridges toured museums, interactive walls evolving with visitor strokes. A living testament. Challenges persisted, human as heartbeat. Joe's meds adjusted for seasonal dips, therapy a biweekly anchor. Jordan's imposter syndrome flared during a Guggenheim nom. They'll see through me. But Joe's steady. They see genius. Believe it. A scare came unannounced. Jordan's annual checkup yielding a shadow on the lung. Smoker's regret from artist haze. Biopsy clear, but the weight hollowed them. Nights clinging like lifelines. If not, Joe whispered, we've lived full. Post-relief, Jordan quit cigarettes cold. Studio ventilated. Life recalibrated. Legacy beckoned subtly. A youth mentorship in the Bronx, teaching queer kids to channel pain to pigment. Joe led sessions on vulnerability, Jordan on resilience, duo dynamic mentoring mini-MES. One boy, wide-eyed with a scarred sketch, hugged Joe. Your bruises? They make mine less scary. Fatherhood whispered too, not blood, but chosen. Fostering a teen runaway, art as therapy. But that was future canvas, blank and beckoning. Years folded like well-worn pages. By 35, their loft expanded. A Crown Heights brownstone, studios adjoining, walls shared. Shows global, Venice Biennale Bridges, Tokyo abstracts. Critics evolved from rivalry rags to reverence. Harlan Reyes. The seam that redefined us. One crisp October they revisited the bridge. Not for peril but pilgrimage. Tourists milled, but they claimed a bench, hands laced. From Punch to this, Jordan mused, river glittering below. Joe leaned in, breath warm. Hate was just love in disguise. Jordan smiled, pulling a miniature canvas from his pack. Their figures, aged gracefully, seems eternal. And peace? It's the masterpiece we keep painting. As dusk deepened, city lights kindling one by one, they walked home arm in arm. Rivals no more, but revolutionaries of the heart. In New York's endless hum, they'd found not just survival, but sanctity. Two souls, scarred and soaring, bound in the art of us. The end? No, endings are illusions. Their story continued, stroke by stroke, in the quiet revolution of simply being. Seen, held, whole.